Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into what is literally the ultimate high-stakes psychological thriller. Imagine being locked inside a luxurious million-dollar mansion with everything you could possibly ever want. Sounds great, right? Well, now imagine that absolute dream completely unraveling into a nightmare. We're looking at a brutal, entirely relentless test of endurance where 15 overconfident challengers were pushed to their absolute breaking point.
119 days. I mean, let that sink in for a second. That's nearly a third of a year entirely stripped away from normal life, completely isolated from the outside world, from family, and from freedom. This wasn't just some fun weekend getaway. This was a grueling marathon of mental endurance.
And you know what? The breakdown happened incredibly fast. All that initial bravado completely vanished, and it was quickly replaced by desperate pleas of, "I want to go home, I don't care, bro." You literally have grown men begging to leave, practically throwing away a life-changing prize just so they could sleep in their own beds.
All right, let's jump into Section 1. Arrogance meets the mansion. How 15 haters met their match.
So all 15 of these contestants were actually handpicked for one specific reason. They publicly bragged that MrBeast's challenges were way too soft and that they would definitely win. But the hilarious, almost pathetic contrast between their massive egos and the actual reality is just staggering. I mean, one challenger literally gave up a 7-bedroom, million-dollar estate on day one for a 30-piece chicken nugget meal. It just proves how quickly the harsh reality of endless confinement really sets in.
Moving right along to Section 2, the house descends into chaos. Coping mechanisms fail.
See, because they couldn't just walk out without swallowing their pride, that intense boredom quickly morphed into straight-up destructive behavior. Just looking at this timeline for the first month and a half, it's wild. Day 1, we obviously have that first fast food elimination. But by day 10, the frustration completely boils over and the contestants physically destroy the very mansion they're trying to win. By day 40, the game totally abandons the wrecked physical space and starts targeting their minds, using handcuffs and deep psychological isolation. To really give you a sense of the absolute carnage going on around day 10, doors were being kicked down, barbecue sauce was literally poured all over the carpets, and actual beds were thrown off the balconies. The mansion turned into this deranged animalistic battleground purely because they took away the TV remotes. Which brings us to Section 3, the torment of isolation, a prison of their own making. So once the house was completely wrecked, Jimmy stepped in and systematically stripped away whatever freedom they had left. Step 1, they were handcuffed together, which totally destroyed any sense of physical privacy. Step 2 was the bunker alarm challenge, where they actually had to press a hand scanner every 60 seconds, just a totally brutal form of sleep deprivation and hypervigilance. And finally, Step 3, solitary confinement. They were placed in tiny rooms, isolated from everyone else, and left with absolutely nothing but their own thoughts.
The real enemy here wasn't the physical tasks, like kicking down doors or lifting weights. No, it was the crushing, suffocating weight of lost time. While they were trapped in those rooms, life on the outside just kept moving on without them. One contestant, Pierce, even graduated high school while locked inside the Beast Mansion. Missing those monumental life events, that is exactly what broke their spirits. Next up, Section 4, counting to 100,000, Ryan's descent into madness.
Let's focus on one contestant in particular, Ryan, who found himself stuck in excruciating solitary confinement. To fight off the crippling boredom, he decided to do something insane. He decided to count out loud, one by one, all the way up to 100,000. Just imagine the sheer, maddening repetition of speaking every single integer up to 100 grand without losing your place and without sleeping.
Here's the craziest part, though. Ryan didn't just count. His brain actually began to short-circuit. It took such an immense physical and mental toll that his mouth literally hurt. He kept losing track of where he was, and it led to pure hallucinations. He literally started seeing numbers floating in the air right in front of him. So here's how that whole insane journey actually played out. It started purely out of isolation-induced boredom. He hits a massive mental wall halfway through at 50,000, but he stubbornly refuses to sleep. He pushes through the intense exhaustion, the visual hallucinations, and the auditory strain, and amazingly, he actually succeeds. And his grand reward for all this? Jimmy dumped 100,000 literal pennies onto his floor. Just a hilariously inconvenient cleanup job for an impossible mental feat. Okay, Section 5, the final hand-on-wall showdown, Uthi versus Asher.
So, fast forward through months of grueling challenges, emotional breakdowns, and massive amounts of quitting. We're finally left with just the two most resilient, incredibly stubborn contestants out of the original 15. But right before their final battle, there's one last psychological shock. They're let out of their isolation rooms only to discover that the trashed, barbecue sauce-covered battleground has been completely, secretly restored to its original million-dollar glory. Suddenly, this prize is very real and very beautiful all over again. So the final challenge is announced. Keep your hand on the mansion. The last one to let go wins the house. I want you to put yourself in the shoes of Uthi and Asher for a second. You have survived 119 days of literal torture. Your hand is now glued to a wall. You are beyond exhausted. Who is going to break first? Well, on one side, we have Asher. Throughout the entire 119 days, Asher maintained this unwavering, self-centered arrogance that just rubbed the entire house the wrong way. He famously claimed he had the, quote, least amount of life outside of here, and he played a totally selfish game. His motivation was pure, unfiltered ego. But then, contrast Asher with Uthi. Uthi's motivation wasn't even really just about the house anymore. It had become a deep-seated vendetta. Asher had basically become the house villain, and Uthi was fueled by the sheer willpower to ensure that the villain did not win. His sole mission was to outlast Asher, making this a crazy battle of ego versus pure spite and determination. They stand there for hours, pushing through absolute exhaustion, even figuring out how to sleep while standing up. But in the end, it wasn't some grand surrender that ended it all. A sudden, massive crack of thunder echoed through the sky. The sheer shock of the noise caused Asher a fatal lapse in concentration. He flinched, pulling his hand off the glass for just a split second. And just like that, the 119-day war was over. Uthi was crowned the winner. Look at this. In the end, 15 people walked in so incredibly confident that these challenges were going to be easy. 14 of them walked out completely broken, beaten by boredom, isolation, paranoia, and just simple human error. Only one walked away with the keys. Enduring psychological confinement is far, far from easy. Which leaves us with one final thought to walk away with today. You know, watching from a screen, it's really easy to say you'd survive. But ask yourself honestly, would you truly be willing to sacrifice 119 days of your sanity, your relationships, and your grip on reality for just a chance at $1 million mansion? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you all next time.